Remember to use the hashtag MondaySpecialKE to talk to us. Send us your texts as well on 22422. We are joined in studio by Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi as well as TJ Kajwang. We want to talk a little bit about the Saba Saba rally at Uhuru Park. And can I start by asking you, Honorable Kajwang, was it an anticlimax?
No, it wasn't an anticlimax. You know, Janet, people have been asking this all the time. We have faced propagandists, well-wishers, and other soothsayers talking about what will happen after Monday. And so people think that anything else would have happened. And I've been questioning myself, what do people take us for? That we are going to have a coup d'etat? That we are going to have the Arab Springs? That we would tell boys to march to State House to do what?
Yeah, but some of the speakers at Uhuru Park were telling the people at the rally that they can march to State House, for example. You know, they consider they do a sit-in in Uhuru Park. That's the kind of rhetoric that was coming out.
Well, sitting they can, because under the law they can picket all they want. But if you listen to the context of how we addressed the rally, we told the people of Kenya, because this is the first time we are actually actualizing Article 1 of the Constitution, to show the Republic how it is that people can either directly or indirectly exercise their sovereignty. That you can come together, and if so many of you as are in the Republic are able to come to a conclusion, then you may make positions, which positions are constitutional, and you can put them in such a way that they are dealt with. Now, there is no anticlimax about this. I think either that people were expecting, other people may have been expecting things which are unconstitutional, in which case they don't have Kenya at heart. But this shows that we are a responsible coalition that is raising pertinent issues on the table, that we are calling on Kenyans and the leaders of this country to examine these issues so that we have a collective way and approach that we are able to solve them out. We are not rascals. We are constitutional lawyers. We are constitutional politicians. We are in the practice of democracy, and this is what we have shown today.
Okay. Well, I know you talked about having drafted the resolutions. I want to come to that in just a moment. Senior Counsel, the Okoa Kenya movement, in your views, first of all, maybe I can ask you what you think, or what you would deem as the legal interpretation of this Okoa Kenya movement. What are your thoughts on it? What's the legal interpretation of it?
I mean, it means nothing really. I mean, both the idea and the resolutions they made, I mean, they're not worth the paper they're written on, really. I mean, it's meaningless.
Okay.
It's an exercise in futility. I mean, contrary to what my learned friend said, I mean, Article 1 has nothing to do with what he said. Article 1 says that the people being sovereign can exercise their sovereign power through other organs. It doesn't mean you can declare in Uhuru Park, you know, that the government of Kenya is led by so and so. I think two mistakes court made in the last month is that they biled two events, gave a high profile, and they delivered in both. And to say whether it was anticlimax really is understatement, because it was so underwhelming, both when Raila came back from America. US, I mean, it was built, you know, to be a very historic event. And then what did he say? That he wants a dialogue with the government. Then today he said Saba Saba will be a watershed in the history of Kenya. And then what did he say? He formed something called, what was it?
Okoa Kenya. Okay, I mean, let's go back. Maybe you've explained yourself, but just to be clear, why do you say that both were underwhelming? His return from the US and today's rally?
No, they're underwhelming. I mean, they sell it very well. I mean, if you look at, you know, the PR, the propaganda, the, you know, I mean, the crescendo, you know, it builds to, you expected something, you know, huge statement. Then, you know, it turns out to be nothing.
It fell short.
But not short. Short is, I mean, flat, you know.
Okay. Your thoughts?
Well, I do not know what it is that it could have come out of, except that we must get a way to handle Kenya. Look, we need to ask the right questions. The right questions, in my view, may not be whether it was an anticlimax or not. The right question to ask, in my view, would be that, are these Kenyans asking valid questions which needs to be resolved so that we can avoid some of the national catastrophes that we have seen? to be dismissive today or tomorrow is neither here and there. We'll do it all the same. And my learned friend is a lawyer, but I'm a politician. I am in the art of organizing people to come to a frame of mind. That is what I do. Now, we are bringing Kenyans to be able to talk about their issues. And there are issues which are serious enough, very critical, that we cannot make them simple. And that these are things which can be considered in a constitutional context and can be discussed and solutions found. Now, Okoa, Kenya, I'll tell you something. We have been asking for dialogue because we thought that it is the cheapest way to do things. Try tyranny or try chaos, it is so expensive. And the Jubilee government have refused to bring dialogue to bear. And so we move to the next stage. The people of Kenya, we have gone round and the people of Kenya have resoundingly said what their mind is. And so we come in a collected place and people say that this is how we want to go. And they don't say we are going to go to State House. They are going to say that now let us have a referendum by which these issues are, we can always measure them out.
How will you, you can respond before I ask about the referendum.
I think court should be disabused of the notion that they speak for the people of Kenya. Which people of Kenya do you speak for?
I'll tell you that you speak for the people of Kenya. Well, I will tell you that very quickly.
Because you don't speak for the people of Kenya.
Let him finish and then you'll be able to respond.
The people of Kenya, I mean, the fact that, you had a rally in Luo Nyanza, in Kakamega and Machakos does not mean that you speak for the people of Kenya. The people of Kenya have never said that court speaks for them. I'm one of the, I'm a member of this country called Kenya. I've never said you will speak for me. And there are millions of Kenyans who said you will never speak for them. So I think you have to be very specific.
But how can you prove that millions of people are not with CORD? Millions of Kenyans?
There are millions because everybody knows that they speak for a small segment of the country. Only that they use the term people of Kenya. And everybody knows that that's not true. So I think they should be very clear on whom they are speaking for. They are speaking for a small section of the Kenyan society.
Well,
that we don't deny.
I'll tell you very quickly that we speak for the Kenyan people. Obviously, I don't speak for him. I'm sure he must. I think Dwale must be speaking for him because he must be coming from the great constituency of Garissa. Now, CORD controls 24 county governments, right? CORD is the conglomeration of the coalition that bears about 126 members of parliament. Now, CORD went into an election, all right, and received, even conservatively, by the measure of what IBC has said, which they have never verified, to be 5-point-something million, all right? Now, my learned friend can only speak for the clients he represents. But I speak for my people. I'm elected to speak for my people. When I speak, Ruaraka speaks. When 126 of us speak, the country speaks.
I would like to move on to the referendum and ask you how you expect or how you anticipate undertaking it or carrying it out. Is it using the same IEBC?
Well, let me say this, that we have put on the table some of the broad principles that we want to exercise on the minds of people. Remember that this is not us as CORD. This is the people assembled speaking. And these are the issues that they have brought broadly before us. A lot of things go into detail. And a lot of things we will have to bring into legal minds and agonize ourselves of how exactly we are able to, is it formulating the questions of referendum, the structure of the referendum, how it can be done. Somebody, for example, suggested at the rally that it cannot be superintended by IEBC, that it should be superintended by some international. That is a view that we will take. And at the end of the day, we have commissioned what we call the National Referendum Committee. Now, this referendum committee will be mandated with bringing in all these beautiful things so that we can understand the details on how we can implement them.
All right, your response to that and even the legal angle to it.
Some Kenyans take what court says seriously, even when court does not expect them to take them seriously, really, because some of the ideas are so outlandish, you know, ideas that are said at the spur of the moment.
So the referendum, for example.
Like the referendum saying that, you know, a UN or a regional agency, probably they had IGAD in mind to organize for them the referendum. But, you know, I mean, the problem CORD has is that most of these ideas they are thrown to the Kenyan public are not well thought out. I mean, these are ideas that are, you know, probably most of them are conceived on that platform. And when you subject them to a little bit of rigor, I mean, they crumble. So I don't think they even expect us to discuss it because I don't think they take it that seriously, you know, all these ideas. When Raila lost the election, 3 months after the election, he called for a referendum to change the constitution so that we can have a parliamentary system. 3 months later on, there was again another call for a referendum so that we can increase the allocation to county governments. So, I mean, this is a party that's groping in the darkness, really. And the earlier they sit back and think seriously, the better for them. Instead of organizing one rally every 2 months, bringing some ideas that don't fly, then look for another idea that don't fly. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they are becoming the laughing stock, you know, really.
All right. Before we take a break, I'd like to hear your response to what
well, Janet, I don't have those beautiful dismissive adjectives to splash people to be this or that. All I can say is that Kenya has reached a point that we need to speak the language of the common man. The common person on the street knows that there is an issue which must be dealt with. The question can never be whether Uhuru refuses to listen to CORD or not. The question must be that is there a people that are raising pertinent issues that we as leaders or we as Kenyans should work out a resolution around and see how we can implement them.
All right, Honorable Kajang. Senior Counsel, there's a question I'd like to ask you, just touching again on the referendum. CORD has decided to go the people way, the referendum way, so to speak. Is it right in not going through Parliament because of the so-called tyranny of numbers? In the past, I believe you've alluded to the fact that there aren't even any healthy debates that are passed or made in Parliament. Do they have a point in going at it the people's way instead?
I think, I mean, I really don't speak for them, but the feeling I get is, the bottom line really is I don't think they're even serious or to achieve that ultimate aim of doing a referendum. But this is short-time political propaganda. That's the way I read it. I mean, you know, a test balloon every few months, see how the people react to it, fly another test balloon, and go, and it goes on like that. And even this Okoa Kenya, I mean, Okoa Kenya is basically CORD again, you know, the same principles will lead it, the same, it's just a rebranding of CORD, you know, the same ideas, the same people, the same agitation. I mean, there's nothing new really. I mean, this is just playing with the Kenyan public, you know, every time trying whether something will work for them or not.
So do you see any crisis in this country, the crisis that CORD is talking about?
The crisis is the crisis they create, you know, every month once, like today, you know. I mean, today there was a crisis because many Kenyans elected not to come to work because they were scared of violence or such things. I mean, that's the crisis we are having, you know. The build-up to the event, I mean, creates a lot of anxiety. And then when the event occurs, I mean, that's another anxiety. The country faces challenges. Nobody can deny that. I mean, we face challenge from insecurity. I mean, the economy is not doing as well as we are doing. There are challenges, you know, the normal challenges the government is facing. But do we have a terminal crisis facing this government? I don't see it.
Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm horrified, to say the least, that Senior Counsel should think that there is no crisis in Kenya in the proportion that requires urgent attention. But that is his opinion. I know that he is fairly urbanite, but the kind of people I represent really consider that there is that type of crisis. The crisis that they are unable to put food on the table. The crisis that there is insecurity everywhere they go and the children cannot go to school. The crisis we have in our electoral process. The crisis we have in general body politics is at the level that we must put something on the table. But I think let's look at it this way, that you saw in the rally, and have you seen in the previous meetings that we have done, many Kenyans who have come, they are not politicians, they are not elected people, but they come to address their people and say what bedevils this country. And you saw they are coming from all walks of life and from all regions, saying something. And so this is a meeting of the people that saying that we now need to do something about ourselves because this is our issue. It is not a politician's issue. If you ask me, it is not in our hands anymore. It was in our hands when we were asking for dialogue. As soon as the Jubilee administration refused to accede to dialogue, it came into the people's hands. And so what you're now seeing and what you're going to see is really a response of the people, and they're going to handle themselves.
Can I ask him one question? I mean, the CORD leaders, the 3 CORD leaders were in government only 12 months ago. If you look at their history, 50 years they were in government, a combined 50 years, either as a prime minister, a minister, vice president. What is the crisis that the country is engulfed in the last 12 years that was not there, that they could not address when they were in government? The only change in that dynamic is that they are not in government. I mean, does it mean that the 3 of them, because they are not in government, we have crisis? I mean, they were in government 12 months ago. Why didn't they address these issues they are talking about?
First of all, I refuse to put annexures between the leaders and the so-called issues we are discussing. It is unnecessary. We are talking about what my people in Roraka go through. I was not in that government. I do not care what was there before. What I know now is that my people of Roraka are asking some pertinent questions. But I'll tell him something. That look, something like national audit of appointments, leave alone the CORD. We are in the cold. We are in the opposition. All right, we are there. But take the Jubilee, for example. They told their people that we are going to give you jobs. We are going to have equitable sharing of appointments. We are going to lead this nation in a particular way. And take the national audit of the appointments that have been made before. Forget about the CORD people.
No,
Just a minute. Forget about the CORD people. And we are saying now that the Public Service Commission, can they put on the table how many people have been appointed so far? From what regions? From what ethnic extractions? And Kenyans will know whether what we sent them to State House is what they have done in the few days. So let's remove these things away from
before we delve into some of the resolutions.
On appointments, there are 2 kinds of appointment. I mean, the civil service is equal for anybody in this country. I mean, whether you are from the government or not, I mean, the civil servant is independent. But there are certain appointments that are political. I mean, my learned friend would not expect, for example, the president to appoint in his cabinet, people from his party. I mean, there are certain political appointments that the president, when he assumes office, will make. And that's what they are complaining about. They are not finding the number of, for example, X-tribe in the cabinet that used to be. I mean, there's a different dynamics. I mean, there's a new president. He will elect whom he wants. So they should not expect that appointment. But in terms of civil servants, I don't think there have been such a fundamental change that they can really complain.
So your point earlier was in the last 12 months, really, they weren't as vocal about the issues then as they are now.
Of course, like, I mean, you will see one of them complaining about the security, the dominance in one tribe. I mean, those guys were in government when these same guys were in the same positions.
Right. I'd like to delve into some of the, some of what you drafted. I mean, you talked about it. Demand that the Jubilee administration addresses the escalating cost of living by reviewing the taxation regime, failing which we will boycott the consumption of goods and services. So reviewing the taxation regime, how would you then go about doing something like that? I know you talked about the fact that a lot of this will probably be discussed and unpacked over time, but right now, how can you explain that?
Well, these are the, shall I say, the beacons that the people are putting for the government to see that there is issues of a high cost of living, and it all boils down to taxation regime. And the people are saying, I'm glad that they said it, that the only safety net that is left for them is to boycott some of these services which are away from the ordinary Mwananchi's capacity. And they are even saying that companies that follow monopolistic tendencies, such companies can be boycotted by the people. Now, you see, if this was a responsive government, then they would know and feel it. Something like taxation is very easy to handle, for example. Most of the issues that the reason why the cost of unga cannot come down is because of the VAT law.
Right.
I have sat in that parliament and I know it. And then there are some immediate things that they can do. But there are others which by adopting good governance, they are able to do some things that will make the cost of living.
Unfortunately, we're almost out of time.
Yes.
Let me give you a chance to
I mean,
respond
the poor
to that.
thinking process I talked about, code, this is a classic example. Why do you affect the taxation regime? It's in parliament. That is his job. I mean, there's a bill that comes, the finance bill or the VAT bill. That is his job, to debate in parliament and say that this is too high, this is too low, and that is where the regime is affected. Not in the streets, not in demonstrations, not in rallies. So, I mean, this is a classic example of the failure of parliament, you know, to do its proper job. And I'm surprised that he's saying that we will affect this change in public browser.
Yeah.
It's done in parliament.
Okay.
Can I say my last word?
Your last word, unfortunately.
My last word would be that
okay.
that today the people of Kenya have come together exercising their sovereignty under Article 1. And they've said three main things in my view. One is that we need to have a national referendum. Number two, we want Public Service Commission to put a national audit so that this issue of ethnicity that is going runaway, we can tackle it.
Okay.
And number three is the disbandment of IEBC to be able to create a level play field so that we can have things constitutionally. I don't have to go Arab way. I don't have to go the coup d'etat way to be able to get. Now I'll tell you that many of these things, as senior counsel is saying, people propose that, well, the Jubilee side proposed that they should be discussed in parliament. Under Article 94 and 95, issues to do with the issues such as what we have put together is not within the mandate of the National Assembly. It's not in the mandate of the Senate. It is somewhere. It is outside the legislature.
I'll have to leave it at that.
Well,
unfortunately, we're completely out of time.
I don't want to stop before I say, please apologize for my dressing style. You know that I'm otherwise a very fashionable guy.
It was the timing.
But
we still thank you all the same for coming. Senior Counsel, thank you so much for coming. Honorable Kajwang, we thank you for your thoughts. Certainly something we'll be unpacking over the next few days.